I'm standing here with a Mazda CX-60 and a BMW i4. So we have a peek of today's technology and a look into the future of what we'll be driving soon, hopefully. Well, you can already drive it now, but you get what I mean. Because over here we've got electric drive, and over here we've got a 3.3 liter 6-cylinder diesel. So when you're buying a car today and you're deciding between a diesel or a gas engine or an electric car, well, with an electric car you're basically just thinking of range. But with a car like this, well, the problem is most of the manufacturers today have they've been doing downsizing for a long time now. The engines have been gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. 1.5, 1.4, 1.3, 1 liter, 0.9 liters. Where does it stop? And the problem is, in our tests, we've seen that these tiny engines usually have a much higher consumption over the long run than a bigger engine, because they just don't have enough power and they have to work more and more. So Mazda has a different logic. They said right sizing, not downsizing. So the right engine for the right car. In this case, a big diesel engine. Over here, with an electric car, well, most of the weight goes into that battery. So a lot of the times people choose smaller batteries, but you really shouldn't. You should select a larger battery for a longer range, even if you only do like city driving and so on. Because, well, you'll also be more efficient, you won't have to charge as much. But the thing is, most of these cars come in SUV varieties as well, which is just insane for an electric car. They should be smaller, they should be lower, because even with an Audi, we've seen that when they changed the rear view mirrors for cameras, which were smaller and had a higher aerodynamic coefficient, they gained 10% of range. With electric engines, when you're choosing what kind of an electric engine you want or what kind of power you want, there's really not a lot of choice regarding how the engine is made. It's just, that's how it's made, that's it. You just choose whether you want this much power and this much torque, or this much power and this much torque. And the beauty of electric engines, of course, is that they have all of that torque right at the beginning of the RPM range. They don't really work like diesel or gas engines. So that's your choice. But with diesel and gas engines, that's different, because you can choose how much volume they have, how many cylinders they have, whether they have a turbo or not. And of course, that's where you get your torque and power figures from. And of course, these things do have turbo lags. They don't have the highest torque all the way throughout the range, so we know how they work. But I really think Mazda, thank you Mr. Helicopter, Mazda over here has done something incredible, because this is a 3.3 liter diesel engine, which is not really normal for Europe anymore. That's a big engine. But with this huge car, this heavy car, with all-wheel drive, and I wasn't driving it overly economically, has a fuel consumption of 4.8 liters per 100 kilometers. Try doing that in your 0.9 liter 3-cylinder. This car is pretty amazing, and I'll tell you exactly why. My mother has zero interest in cars. She thinks that the most beautiful car is a Mercedes from the end of the 70s, and she doesn't really know anything about engines or any other things. She doesn't drive. But with this car, she said not only that it looks excellent when she saw it from the outside, but that it's also very, very pleasant in general, and that she's going to be sad when it's gone, and that I should do something about getting it. No pressure, but that is an endorsement. I should also mention that I got a new record with my fuel consumption. We already know that this engine is somehow magically very efficient, but I was not expecting this. Forget the 4.8 or whatever I said before. The lowest, and that's probably an extreme, I think it could go slightly lower, but I got 3.6 liters per 100 kilometers. Now that's just unheard of for a big car like this with a 3.3 liter 6-cylinder inline engine. It's stupid, but you know, that's a bit unrealistic because I was driving very economically, and yeah, I mean, you can do it, but your more realistic consumption is going to be around 5, I think. 5.5 if you're a bit heavier on the throttle. And like every car, there's minuses, of course. Now, for this one, there's really just 3 minuses, I would say. One is the infotainment system is a little bit sluggish, especially when you're doing navigation and you want to type in the address. It's strangely slow and choppy. It's not very nice to use, I have to say. It's a bit annoying. The second one is the ride quality. It's perfectly fine, but when you're on more damaged roads, you can certainly feel that the suspension is a bit stiff. It's not as pleasant as you would expect it to be. And the third one is the automatic gearbox down here, which is perfectly fine most of the time, but sometimes it does like to shift a bit roughly, especially in the city, in stop-and-go traffic, in slower traffic. And it does grate a little bit, but you get used to it. But all in all, just like before when I drove this Mazda CX-60 with this engine, I'm just thoroughly impressed by how much of a nice car it is. And this engine is just, it is fantastic. And it sings.